What if the immigration pathway you were counting on suddenly disappeared without warning? What if Canada quietly closed a program that thousands of nannies and caregivers were waiting for, without ever opening it? Why are temporary workers in Canada now stuck in limbo, unsure if permanent residency is still possible? Who benefits when overseas caregiver programs are shut down, and who pays the price? Is Canada reducing immigration pathways on purpose, or is this part of a larger policy shift? And most importantly, if you are a caregiver, nanny, or temporary worker in Canada right now, does this change your future forever? Stay with me, because what you're about to hear directly affects jobs, immigration status, and permanent residency in Canada. What changed in Canada's nanny and caregiver program? This section explains what exactly changed in Canada's caregiver and nanny immigration system and why people are saying the program has been stopped. Why this change has an effect. Caregiver programs were one of the few immigration pathways that allowed workers to move from temporary status to permanent residency without needing high education or professional credentials. When this pathway changes, it directly affects access to PRAR. Key points mentioned below. 1. Older caregiver and nanny programs officially ended in 2024. 2. New home care worker immigration pilots launched in 2025. 3. The stream for applicants outside Canada was closed. 4. Only workers already inside Canada were eligible during intake. Why the overseas caregiver stream was closed. This section focuses on the closure of the overseas pathway and why it never opened for new applicants. Why this change has an effect. Thousands of caregivers outside Canada were preparing documents, job offers, and language tests expecting this stream to open. Its closure removes a direct entry path to permanent residency. Key points mentioned below. 1. The overseas stream never accepted applications. 2. IRCC officially listed it as closed. 3. No timeline announced for reopening. 4. Future reopening delayed until at least 2030. How this affects temporary workers. Already in Canada. This section explains the impact on temporary foreign workers currently working as caregivers or nannies in Canada. Why this change has an effect. Temporary workers rely on clear PR pathways to maintain long-term status. When programs close, workers risk falling into status gaps or being forced to leave Canada. Key points mentioned below. 1. Workers who applied during 2025, intake are still being processed. 2. No new caregiver PR applications accepted. 3. Temporary workers must now rely on other PR programs. 4. Job continuity does not guarantee PR anymore. Impact on immigrants living in Canada without PR. This section covers immigrants living in Canada on temporary status, including work permits and study permits, who plan to transition through caregiving. Why this change has an effect. Caregiver programs were considered more accessible than skilled immigration streams. Removing them increases competition and raises eligibility thresholds. Key points mentioned below. 1. Fewer direct PR pathways available. 2. Increased reliance on express entry and PNPS. 3. Higher language and skill requirements. 4. Longer wait times for permanent residency. What this means for permanent residency planning. This section explains how PR planning changes for caregivers, nannies, and home support workers. Why this change has an effect. Permanent residency planning depends on predictability. When programs close suddenly, it forces immigrants to rethink their entire strategy. Key points mentioned below. 1. No direct PR route for overseas caregivers. 2. In Canada, caregivers face limited windows. 3. PR planning now requires multiple backup pathways. 4. Caregiving alone is no longer a guaranteed route. Why this change matters beyond caregivers. This section places the caregiver program change into the bigger picture of Canada's immigration policy. Why this change has an effect. Caregivers support families, seniors, and childcare systems. Reducing pathways affects not just workers, but Canadian households and labor shortages. Key points mentioned below. 1. Reduced caregiver inflow impacts families. 2. More pressure on existing workers. 3. Signals tighter immigration controls. 4. Reflects shift towards selective immigration. Canada's decision to close the overseas nanny and caregiver pathway marks a major shift in how permanent residency is accessed through caregiving work. What was once a clear and predictable route has now become limited, selective, and time-sensitive. The end of older caregiver programs, followed by the brief and restricted opening of the new home care worker immigration pilots, has left many temporary workers and immigrants uncertain about their future. For those outside Canada, the message is clear. The direct path to permanent residency through caregiving no longer exists. For those already inside Canada, opportunities still exist, but only for those who were able to act during narrow intake windows. This change does not erase the value of caregivers, but it does change how Canada chooses who can stay permanently. The solution now is strategic planning, not waiting. Temporary workers and caregivers in Canada must shift their focus toward alternative permanent residency pathways, such as express entry, provincial nominee programs, and employer-supported immigration options. Improving language scores, gaining Canadian work experience, securing long-term job offers, and staying informed about policy changes are no longer optional. They are essential. And if you want to stay ahead of these changes as they happen, make sure you subscribe to this channel because immigration rules can change without warning, and timely information can make the difference between staying in Canada and starting over. For those outside Canada, the most realistic approach is to enter through a legal work permit first and then build eligibility from within. Immigration pathways may close, but preparation keeps options open.